Today, we're going to be telling you a Christmas story, but this Christmas story is not your normal one. This one, alas, is a tale of woe.
Whoa!
Not that kind of woe.
Oh.
Better.
This is the story of Edgar, our friend, who literally saved Christmas.
What have you done today?
Nothing. You know why? Because you destroyed Christmas before Edgar here could save it. It's at least partially your fault.
Oh, it's all your fault. You.
Oh, and you, and you.
And back there with the cookie? Put down the cookie. You didn't earn that cookie.
So think on that as we begin our story, Saving Christmas, a feel-good macabre tale. It was a crisp and chilly November day at the North Pole. The breeze was whipping over the icebergs, and it blew snow through the streets of Christmas Village as it whistled and sang its way past the houses and workshops. Inside those workshops, the elves were getting ready for Christmas.
Santa was visiting the workshop when all the machines sputtered, then ground to a stop. The lights flickered and went out. A groan went through the workshop as candles were lit and elves began working on projects that didn't require machines. This was the third time this week, and Christmas was right around the corner. The elves and Santa were afraid they might not finish all of their work before Christmas if the power kept going out.
Christmas Village is powered by a special magic that comes from the belief in Santa Claus. When most people believed, the factories hummed and thrummed with energy. When people stopped believing, the power decreased to a trickle and stopped. Belief swelled and decreased pretty regularly, but it had never been this low before. Santa's elves all worked in just one factory. And when night came, they had to light candles. It was getting worse, and Santa had a very difficult decision to make.
Santa Claus is a mythical being, and all mythical beings need belief in order to continue to exist. Without belief, Santa, his elves, and Christmas itself would just fade away. Santa needed to find a way to increase that belief. If he couldn't, he would have to prepare his elves for the end. Santa didn't sleep that night, so he was still pacing when he heard a soft knock at his door.
Santa opened his door to find Edgar, a shy but smart elf, leaving. He stopped him and invited him in. "Edgar, what brings you here so late at night?" Edgar replied that he'd had an idea, which might just save Christmas Village. Santa listened as the elf told him about the belief of the elves themselves. It was different from humans, because human belief is based on faith, where the elves is based on love. "I think it's close enough, though, and I want to make a machine to try to harness it," said Edgar. Santa gave the elf his biggest smile. "You build that machine, Edgar, and if it works, you'll save us all."
The following week, Santa checked in on Edgar. "How is my inventor elf today? Is there any news on the machine?" Edgar looked up with tears in his eyes. "It's just not the same, and I can't make it work. The power of belief goes forth from humans to make the world a better place, but the power of love and elves stays inside to help the elves make the world a better place. The machine can't find it because it's all locked in here." With that, Edgar poked himself in the shoulder with a screwdriver he had been holding.
With a yelp, he threw the screwdriver down on the machine, and something strange happened. The machine lit up. Its dials started to turn, and it began to make clunking sounds. Then the lights of the workshop flickered and turned on, and the assembly lines whirred to life. The elves all stopped what they were doing and gathered around the strange contraption. Edgar looked in stunned silence as Santa Claus clapped him on the shoulder. Well done, Edgar, my lad. Sometimes a kick is all it takes, right? Edgar wandered to the infirmary, shaking his head at what had happened.
Edgar lay sleepless in bed. He heard a knock at his door and opened it to find the village elders on his doorstep. Come in, said Edgar. Come in, said Edgar. The elders entered, and over many mugs of cocoa, they asked him questions about his machine. Could this machine be used to save Christmas? What would the elves have to do in order to make it work? Edgar explained that the machine worked because he had cut himself, allowing the magic inside of him to come out. It was a horrible idea, and he shouldn't have gotten everybody's hopes up about it. I'm sorry, I failed Santa and the whole village.
Edgar was woken early the next morning by a loud thump on his door. He opened it to find Santa Claus himself. I'm sorry, Santa, he said. I was up all night thinking about that dreadful machine, and I guess I overslept. Dreadful machine indeed, said Santa. You've done it, my elf. You've really done it. The workshop is humming and thrumming again, and all of the machines are running at full capacity. You'll go down in history for this, I tell you. Edgar was confused as he quickly dressed and followed Santa to the workshop. He saw a line of elves in front of his workshop and another line of elves leaving with bandages on their arms. When they saw him approached, they turned around, clapped their hands for him, and cheered.
Edgar was horrified and turned to apologize to Santa. It wasn't me, I didn't... But Santa was talking with another elf and had wandered into the factory. Edgar rushed into the workshop to find two of the elders who had visited him last night holding knives and cutting the forearm of each elf as they stepped up to the machine. This isn't very easy to use, Edgar. Do you think you could attach a funnel and maybe an automatic cutting arm? Edgar was sputtering, so the elders stopped to speak with him. Now, Edgar, they said, Christmas is the only reason we elves have for existing. Whatever it takes to save Christmas must be done. Surely a few cuts are a small price to pay. They asked that Edgar make some adjustments to his machine so it could work more efficiently, and went back to their work.
Edgar walked around the village. The elders were right. Without Christmas, they would all fade away. His machine was a horrible thing, but not as horrible as no Christmas. He resolved that he would do as they wished. He returned to his shop and asked the other inventors to work hard to create a better solution. The elders agreed cheerfully and remarked as they left, Edgar, not a word of this to Santa. He wouldn't approve, and it would make him horribly sad. We need him to be jolly this time of year. Edgar promised to keep the elves secret and went home to begin his work.
Edgar had hoped his machine would only be working for a short while, but a few weeks later, it was busier than ever. The factories took too much energy, and even with his improvements, each elf was donating blood a few times each day. Edgar knew the elves couldn't hold out much longer, and Santa was beginning to suspect something was wrong. Worst of all, his latest experiment produced the most disturbing results. He had discovered the answer to all of their problems, but it was a secret so terrible that he couldn't bear to think it. Edgar went back to his workshop to make sure he hadn't made a mistake. The village elders were waiting for him there.
drawing?" they asked. "Nothing," said Edgar, a bit too quickly. "It's just some ideas that could never work out. I was going to just throw this away." "Not so fast," said an elder. "This looks like it would work." "It would," said a shamefaced Edgar. "But it's too horrible to bear, and I'm awful for even imagining it. To think that the most efficient way to use this machine is to put an entire elf inside it. Why, one elf alone would power the village several days. It is terrible to be so close to a solution and still so far away."
The village elders spoke together for a time before returning to the elf. "Edgar," they said, "you must make this machine. Though it is a horrible burden for you to carry, this machine of yours might save us all. We each must do our part, starting with us. We will draw canes now to decide which of us will be the first to test the machine." They drew candy canes and determined a tall, thin elf named Philip the Elder would be the first to test the machine. Edgar was distraught, but agreed to create it anyway.
When the machine was ready, a great party was held after the work of the day was done, and Philip the Elder was the guest of honor. There was singing and dancing and merrymaking as only elves can do. The next morning, to the cheering of the elves, the elders gathered in Edgar's workshop excitedly. Edgar stepped forward and uncovered the machine. The elves drew a collective breath of appreciation. It stood twice the height of an elf, with a walkway on one side leading to a large hopper on one end and a conveyor belt on the other. The machine was painted with green and red stripes and had a large lever on the side near the hopper. Philip stepped forward onto the walkway and entered the machine happily as the elves sang Christmas carols in the background. Edgar turned a switch and the machine clanged and thrummed and clacked and hummed. A big gumdrop-shaped pellet with green and red stripes eventually came out the machine and down the conveyor belt. Edgar placed it in the holder, and the entire village lit up with energy. The elves rushed around the workshop. They put Edgar on their shoulders and carried him around the village, cheering and singing.
Over the next few days, the elves drew lots to decide who would be next in line to enter the machine and keep the power going. It was an honor to make the greatest sacrifice to save Christmas, and there was excitement in the village when the list of names was read. The elves walked proudly into the machine, waving to their friends and singing Christmas carols. In a few moments, the line of green and red striped gumdrops exited the machine.
It was the night before Christmas, and no elves could be spared, but Santa's sleigh was still grounded. The village elders were worried. This process had taken more elves than they had hoped, and there were not enough left to carry on much longer. They went to Edgar to discuss the issue. When they arrived in his workshop, they found a note next to the very last green and red striped dot. "There are not enough elves to give even one more. My horrible work is finished, and I can give Santa this one last gift." At the top of the machine, sticking right out, was Edgar's left foot that he had used to push the lever. The elves took the foot and dipped it in gold and made it a key ring for Santa. When they placed the pellet into Santa's sleigh, they gave him the keychain so that he would remember how his elves loved him.
The day after Christmas, an elf called Silas visited the elders, huffing and out of breath. "We've done it," he said. "We've got it this time. We'll never run out of power again." The elders listened carefully as he told them his tale. We've created some games because we're the best in the world at creating fun things. These games live on the internet at our very own site. We've made it look too good to be true, so they'll think that it's fake, but they'll still come to visit. They can watch us at work and chat with us or challenge us to games. They can decide which elf games get played and which songs we sing, and they can even track Santa through the village. The best part is the games they can play. Oh, the games, they're the best. They can sneak into houses and fly through skies. They can learn to speak reindeer or ski against snowmen. They'll log in by the millions, and every time they do, they'll power our workshops and factories.
Santa's Christmas Village website, www.savingchristmas.com, started receiving visitors right away. In weeks, more and more people visited the website, and soon enough, several million people a day logged on. Each person's play powered the village, and soon there was enough energy to carry on at full production for the whole year. The elves even managed to use Edgar's machine to store the extra power in the form of green and red striped gumdrops for the future, in case belief ever lagged again. Before long, the entire village was filled with gumdrops, and they decorated the roofs and walls, even the sidewalks with them. Each time they looked at the power pellets, they thought about the elves that had saved Christmas. If Santa knew, he never told, but he still carries that keychain everywhere he goes. And that is the story of our friend Edgar.
Merry Christmas.